Good afternoon, everybody. This is Shannon with Health Aware at Community Memorial Health Systems. I hope you are doing well. Happy mid-February. From my understanding, quite a lot of the country is under severe cold weather, while we here in beautiful Ventura have been having some beautiful weather. It's good to be here with you today. We're going to have a little topic that I call it little because it's something that we have become so accustomed to, we don't even want to acknowledge how actually big that it is. And that is stress. And stress, particularly in its effect on our hearts. What it means to us in regards to our heart health, what it means to the rest of our body for whole health. And I'm going to try to keep it pretty simple. You can certainly take the opportunity on your own to look into a couple of the studies, clinical trials that I talk about. They get a little heavy, but we want to be able to make it clear that first and foremost, stress for all of us is something that we can relate to, especially the past year. And as odd as it sounds, we are in it together, sharing and not feeling alone in the amount of stress in our lives has somewhat been comforting during this crazy year. So if you're just now joining us live, or maybe you're going to watch and catch up with this later, know you're not alone. Know that the desire to care for your heart and your health is of utmost importance, and the stress that comes with just being a human being, and also the stress of things that we completely cannot control, like the current pandemic that we're all living through. Just know you're not alone, that we're in this together. So talking today, and it being a little heavier subject than maybe a lot of people like to dive into, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer out there. This video you're watching is in no way any type of treatment. It's in no way any type of diagnosis. It's just something for like a tool for you to have that one will empower you to take care of your heart. For each of us, no matter who we are, no matter what our gender is, our age, our ethnicity, we want caring for our hearts to become a part of our lifestyle, or I like the term better now, our habits, our routines. So in saying that it's not any type of treatment or diagnosis or anything like that, if it brings up something for you that you say, hey, maybe I need to seek treatment from a professional, you can always reach out to us at Health Aware, and our nurse practitioner, Andrea Ricketts, can guide you to some of the top-notch, amazing care that we have here in Ventura. So this is just a tool for you. It's a resource. It's an education. And studying and preparing for this class, one of the most amazing things I learned was that we actually can change heart disease, cardiac problems with education. That lifted my own heart so much, because I've spent so many years giving in my so many years in my job wanting the goodness of health and happiness for our hearts, for everyone. Okay, that stressed me out, talking about stress. So where do we go from seeking treatment for things that we all go through? This stress is relative. It's not a bad thing. I think that's something that we kind of did in the past 20, 30 years, is we made the term stress something bad. You are built and wired to have a stress response in your body, but it's the perception of that stress that's so important, especially in regards to what physically happens to the body. Today, focusing a little bit more on what it does to the heart. So all kinds of different stress situations out there. And I have my notes today because there's a lot of information in this short period. And I'm going to try to keep it simple. But I want to invite you, as you come to the video and you're here kind of maybe thinking, what do I do to take care of my heart right now? What do I do to take care of my heart long term? what is of utmost importance, how we perceive stress and react to it is almost more important than what is actually occurring in this space and time. So one of the things I always go back to is Hippocrates. So Hippocrates being in history one of our greatest physicians of all time, not only in his knowledge, but also in his philosophical, logical, loving way that he thinks. And in my Bible here that we pretty much live by in cardiology the last few years, they quoted him, and I thought this was amazing. He said, "You ought not to attempt to cure the body without the soul. The cure of many diseases is unknown to physicians because they disregard the whole." So what are we learning in our advances in Western medicine and the phenomenon in our surgical techniques, our knowledge of the body? We've learned that you're not just your finger, right? You're not just your nose. You're not just, an issue I'm having on my ankle or an issue I'm having with my lungs and breathing. You're a whole being. And part of being that whole being is, who are you in your soul and your heart, not meaning your heart in the physical muscle and organ that it is, but in your heart enveloping the wholeness of the center of everything that you are. And that is becoming more and more important in medicine. And this kind of Bible now of integrating medicine, cardiac behavior in the mind, body, heart, soul experience is the whole. So Hippocrates was way ahead of his time. So when we think about stress, I think it's important to think about it as a whole. It's not just one thing of, oh, I'm stressed out today and I got a headache. That may be physically how you're manifesting stress. Not recognizing kind of the complexity of what led to that headache. So we're going to go into that a little bit today, but in particular about kind of the stress and what it does to your heart. So the past 2 decades, through multiple interdisciplinary studies amongst multiple cardiologists, our educational institutes, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Duke University, Northwestern University, some of our leading cardiovascular, I hate using this term, intellectual facilities are following clinical studies and to try to understand the emotional, spiritual, mental side of our body and how that affects the physical side of the body. So kind of keeping that in mind. Past 2 decades, utmost importance, observing the humans, each of us, that our reactions to things that are happening around us have a tremendous effect on the physical body. So one of the studies that stood out to me over and over again in some of my research, and I do nerd out on a lot of these things because it's my passion and I find it so interesting, is the Interheart Study. It was multinational, thousands of people, over 50,000 people. So it's not just a clinical study that was a small group of people, it was huge. So obviously in numbers, there's more safety because we start seeing a trend. We start following, actual observational science. It's not just based on a theory. It's not just based on kind of something that's anecdotal where we kind of look at it and we think that there is correlation. You want to make sure that what you're looking at is always backed by numbers. So this one's huge. And one of the things that came about in regards to the health of our heart is we never can control 3 things: our age, our gender, our family history. Completely out of control. It is what it is. There's no changing that. What can we control? Lifestyle modifications. If you've joined me the past couple of videos on Mondays here with Health Aware, we've talked about things that are lifestyle modifications, things that we have control over and things that we don't. We go back to it over and over again. This tiny percentile, about 20%, can't control your age, can't control your gender, you can't control what your DNA is. But the other 80% we can control. And in stress management or dealing with stress, which we all have, some of it uncontrollable, we'll get into that a bit, how does that affect my body? How does it affect my health? So when studying the Interheart Study, one of the things that came about was, are things modifiable? That's one of my favorite new words, especially as I'm getting older and I'm trying to adjust my own health journey as to what is modifiable? Where can I keep or maintain a certain good level of health and quality of health with things that I can't control, such as age, maybe certain genetic factors, with things that I can control in lifestyle modification. So thinking about that and kind of putting that in the back of your mind as you kind of participate in the rest of listening to this video. There's what we call a bidirectional path when it comes to stress. One is psychological. So if you can imagine drawing a triangle, you have a path that goes this direction that is very psychological. It's all up here in your brain. And you have another that's truly spiritual and emotional that goes this direction. And then at the bottom of that triangle, you have the physical body and the foundation of where all those things kind of intercede. So visualizing, right? My husband explained to me as we were talking about this class, it gives some visuals. If that helps you, I hope it does. Kind of thinking about this in a triangular, right, is the most stable position. The triangular 3 is Zen, right? We talk about so much in our brains. Rule of 3 is Zen, that kind of stability in this and how you manage stress. And you'll see where it all kind of comes together. Bidirectional, the two paths will often lead to the foundation. So you want to keep that in mind. Do you have certain personality characteristics that can lead you down each path? Yes, and you want to, there's no judgment in any of that. It's who you are, it's how you're wired. I always say, I like to use myself as an example when I'm teaching. It took a long time for me to really acknowledge and be humble to the fact that I have a hot temper. I have a hot temper that will react very quickly, but in a healthy view of that, I'll react and actually state my anger or show my anger versus maybe holding it in, which we start learning that actually can cause more physical damage to the body. Acknowledging and naming things, that how you react to stress is very important in this process of how does it affect your heart. So assessing an awareness of your mood and what is causing you distress. I want to go back to stress is normal. Stress is out of our control oftentimes. There's a lot of stress that's very much within our control. And within this book and talking about how we treat cardiac situations, it is out of your control when we have an earthquake is one of the examples that they gave. And they spoke specifically here, this blew my own mind, about the Northridge quake in 1994, which for those of us that are watching this and we live in Southern California, many of us can remember the trigger of what was out of our control of stress in the earthquake increased the average in LA medical systems of 4 people having a heart attack up to 24 within one day. It shows that the body can be overwhelmed with stress, especially when things are out of our control. The other one that came up, in 2004, they started tracking a group of people who had intracardiac defibrillators within their heart. These defibrillators are truly a miracle of science. They are one of the greatest innovations in Western medicine for innovation of preventing sudden cardiac arrest. Everything we all want to avoid as long as we can, especially up until the age of at least about 80, 90, 100 even nowadays. Could it reverse an arrhythmia in the heart, that electrical interruption of the heart for the heart to not pump correctly? After the bombing of the World Trade Centers in 9/11, ventricular arrhythmias, that horrible kind of electrical conduction of the heart that we don't want happening, more than doubled within a month. So it wasn't just that day of the bombing, it was over a month's period that the stress of that situation caused the heart to go into ventricular arrhythmias. And I like to kind of throw this out there when I was talking about this class and to myself today. I think it's very important to acknowledge kind of the worst scenario situations so that you can see the effect, and then how do we deal with them as they kind of lessen for most of us in life. So the effect of stress obviously has a severe and strong reaction in some, especially when it is acute. In all these years and over the years, I should say, of talking with patients about their own cardiac experience in cardiology that was acute, meaning it was sudden and rapid. It was right now, in the right now. It wasn't chronic. Chronic actually can be just as bad over time, but in a sudden acute situation, meaning it happened right now, many of them often went back to what they felt physically, and they would explain it. And that gets into us recognizing stress and the effect on the body. So we are born with the ability to react, fight or flight response. And I always add in freeze. Flight, fight, freeze. Okay? You cannot ever help how you're wired, right? It's something that should be added on with genetics and family history. Some of us are just wired to automatically freeze up in a moment of stress. Some of us are instantly fired to react and fight. Some of us, they're out, they run. That's okay too. So in that moment, it's the perception of what is going on around you. What are you perceiving to happen that you choose kind of how your body's going to react. And this is what's become so important for us, especially in this century that we're living in, is you running from danger, from a bombing, is completely different from you even being stuck in traffic. Is the danger real and there? Yes. Is the stress, the outside stress there? Yes. You reacting is imperative. So one of the examples that we give in responding to stress and what the body does is an awareness of your surroundings. As a human being, like every other mammal out there, you spend a lot of time just kind of gazing around and looking and observing and using all 5 of your senses. Do you have a sense of safety is of utmost importance at all times. It's just how you're made. So using your sense of smell. Do I smell smoke? Do I see fire? Do I touch and feel something and it's immediately hot? Do I respond around me to the reactions of my body? The hair standing up on the back of my neck, or maybe my tummy went whoop. That is your body's natural fight or flight response. It is a physiological, how you're made reaction. Beyond that moment, and we'll talk about the triggers and what happens physically in that moment, how do we cope with that stress? Well, there's all kinds of different modalities of going about handling stress, but in a true danger and stressful position, what do we want to happen? And that's really important in regards to your body understanding what is going on. It's really important for you to have control of your brain, for your brain to tell your body how it needs to respond. So when we talk about the 2 nervous systems, you have the fight, flight, freeze up response, but you also have that part of your nervous system that you do have some control over, that you learn to use tools to react appropriately. That's what we want down the road when we talk, especially next week on Monday, about how do I integrate, how do I blend in all these things I know are happening in science, especially to my body, and what are things I can use as tools to help cope. But today the focus is just kind of acknowledging what the stress is and what it does to the body. So cardiac behavioral medicine, this is exploding right now. The past 2 decades, it is becoming kind of the focus in cardiac health. That not only means coronary artery disease, which we've talked kind of intensively about, and go back and talk about, causes of a heart attack, causes of arrhythmias, all these different things. But it's imperative to kind of how we look at our long-term health and taking care of our hearts. How are you dealing on a day-to-day level with stress? The reason for that is that, especially in this Interheart study, they linked it specifically to 32% increase amongst cardiac disease and risk factors is related to stress. It's higher than smoking. Smoking's kind of falling, not that it's not horrible, but smoking's kind of falling down there in those levels of risk factors, because as a society and as a culture, even globally, we are seeing what affects the heart the most. all kinds of different risk factors out there, but 32% of those acute situations of heart disease and heart injury and chronic heart problems relate back to stress, 32%. So obviously we're going to start looking into that more. There's documentation of it. What are people's experiences? Now, assessing and being aware of stress is probably one of the most important things we could do. I don't know anyone, and maybe you guys do, and you could share, you can write in the comments, or maybe talk about people you know that are able to kind of move through life and absolutely nothing affects them. It's rare. That's beyond rare. I've seen it so little where people, and oftentimes I've started to say, I don't think it's the healthiest, and I'll get into that a little bit, but if you kind of have an avoidance technique, or you kind of hunker down and go into, we like to call it that hermit crab mode. You will even hear a lot of cardiologists and American College of Cardiology, American Heart Associations, we talk about different personality traits. There's a type D now in personalities, that it's that person that they're kind of numb, or you think they're numb, or you think they're calm. And if you were to look inside their body, you would see this almost hyperactive situation of stress and how the body's reacting. It just doesn't manifest itself outward. That is extremely dangerous. It's becoming one of the things we look at in cardiology risk that literally has its own screening for now. And that's where we get into this with stress. So if we don't like trying to manipulate our way through life with avoidance, most of us are going to try to handle stress in our lives. And what happens to the body? I always say if you don't acknowledge stress, it's like trying to walk in and play a baseball game without even having a mitt or a bat. Right? You have to have an awareness of just automatically acknowledging this is here and this is what we're dealing with. For many of us, there are three common things we experience. We experience either depression, and I'm not talking clinical depression here. I'm not talking clinically diagnosed anxiety disorders. I'm not talking clinically diagnosed abnormalities as far as our psychological disorders. Okay, that's a completely different other class. Too much to talk about today. I'm talking about the basics of where we start to where it can cause damage cardiac-wise to our body. One of them is obviously hyperarousal. The hyperarousal within the body to any of us is going to be basic wear and tear. So are you wired to an extent to be prepared for real danger? Sure, you want that to happen. If you have a situation where you're driving, I loved one of the reasons they gave here in the book, 100 miles per hour, which we shouldn't be driving, but you're driving on the freeway and all of a sudden someone goes to make a lane change in front of you. Do you need to have your body have an actual response to that? To correct itself, to save yourself in danger? Yes. So it's not a bad thing to have stress. What happens during a moment of stress? I actually went over here and wrote a couple of things down. You have a hyperarousal of your heart rate, your respiration rate, your blood pressure goes up. Many who have this hyperarousal often have underlying disorders that cause them to have a poor heart rate variable. Lots and lots of talk about out there right now, especially scientifically, about your heart rate variability. Some of that can lead back to technology. People are wearing these heart monitors. What does it mean my heart rate variability is low? I always just come back to it's resilience. It's your heart's resilience. Do you have the capability between each beat to have it be nice and stable and normal? If it increases, can you come right back to it? It is how we stress test you. Right? We're looking for that heart rate to rise. That's a good thing. But kind of how does it stay stable? Does it start kind of bouncing all over the place? Does it have these huge variances in the timing of that beat? You can go on your own, start researching heart rate variance. You're going to start seeing that it's a marker for cardiac disease. But we want you to be resilient. In socioeconomic disparities that we are learning more and more about, we see a correlation of poor heart rate variance. It's decreased in those that are under stressful conditions. I don't know any of us that haven't lived through some stressful conditions this past year, but there is also a subgroup of people who are even under a higher level of stress that we're very concerned about. We're watching them closely because they don't just have the stress of maybe a disruption in their lifestyle or even in their finances. They have a disruption in basic needs and psychologically those being met. That has a tremendous effect on the body. So when we talk about stress, we're talking about things that, yeah, are in your control, things that aren't. For some people, economic and social issues can lead to physical stress on the body. So kind of keeping that in the back of the mind, those will have this increased risk of their heart healthiness, resilience, it's all over the place. So having that strong and powerful. The other thing that comes up with stress and that what happens to the body, inflammation. Right? Lots of people that are kind of following their health and taking care of their health. Inflammation's that bad word that we all don't like. And the last 2 decades, the increase of inflammation-related disease, not just cardiac-related, is huge. Why is it so big? Well, it gets into that deep cellular level. When we talk about inflammation, it's that endothelial lining, especially within the heart, that reacts because of hormones, because of circulation issues, because of lack of lifestyle habits that we have. It's hot and bothered and hostile. I always like to use the description of if you cut your hand and your body does what it's supposed to do, it sees an injury, a place of hurt, everything to protect it goes into action. All those white blood cells in your immune system kind of kicks into overdrive because there is inflammation and injury at that site. It is no different than your heart. That area gets, what is it when you see your cut the next day? Actually, it's on this hand that I had yesterday with my chickens, the chicken wire. It's red, it's hot, it's tender. The inside of your heart, inside of your arteries, it's no different. So inflammation is never good. Stress is one of the #1 indicators of why we have cardiovascular disease. Again, 32%. Can stress in the moment that it happens empower us? Yes. Understanding it is one of the greatest things that we can ever do for anyone that's going through a cardiac diagnosis. Proven over and over again. You can kind of look at all the different studies out there. And one of the things we know is that educating yourself on what is physiologically happening to your body is key. Thinking back to those nervous system reactions, we'll pretend that you are encountered in a dangerous situation. It could be all kinds of different things. What happens physically to you? The very first thing that happens is you have a hormonal response to your senses. You've sensed something that is telling you there's danger. It could be something you see, something you hear, something you smell. I would say your sixth sense, right? Your gut, your second brain, something's just not right. The reaction it causes is that your hormones immediately go into action. And you can imagine if you were to look at your own kidneys right now, you have these beautiful little powerful adrenal glands that immediately send out 3 hormones. They send out adrenaline. I always call that's your action hormone. It means I'm going to go into action to protect myself at all costs. I'm in survival mode. It's this huge jump of energy, but physically to the body, what does that cause? Increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased vasoconstriction. We talk about vasoconstriction. It means I'm going to take away from peripheral parts of my body, my feet, my hands, possibly my belly for sure, right? I'm going to shut that down, and I'm going to just give all this flooding in to what is imperative right now, and it's going to be my muscles, my reaction. So you have that response. At the same time, almost simultaneous, there's a few little milliseconds difference there, you have norepinephrine that gets fired up. And norepinephrine, I say, is the one that's that's the best way to say it. I often like to say it's your let's do it hormone. Okay? It's going to trigger the reaction to the brain of let's do this. And it's going to be what is known neurologically in your brain to do. It may mean run. It may mean hide. It may mean all kinds of things. But there's this kind of external action mode from adrenaline and norepinephrine all at the same time to kind of give you your sense to know what to do to protect yourself. The third one, this is the big one that we all talk about. As I like to say, it's the match. Cortisol. So coming out of your kidneys, right, this is why it's so important to try to not be in a chronic state of stress. Those poor little glands, they kind of push all this out. What happens afterward? Well, this tremendous increase in glucose. So when you hear people talk about, you know, my glucose levels are kind of off the chart, and you look at this person, you think, wow, I don't see anything about them that even looks stressed out. Their insides are stressed out, right? They exercise a lot, they practice pretty good sleep, they do these lifestyle things, they eat well, maybe they're really thin, they don't smoke, they don't abuse drugs or alcohol, but their insides are torn up, right? The glucose is kind of off the chart. That's why we're seeing a huge rise in people that you would never think would have type 2 diabetes. They have type 2 diabetes because they're just in this constant state of stress. Cortisol just firing. We want cortisol when that bear is chasing us in the forest. We do not want cortisol day in, day out, repetitive. You want to blow that match out. So thinking about that, what does it cause into the heart? Specifically to the heart, we are seeing an increase in platelets, right? So the sticky part of our blood, it causes this reaction because of the fight or flight response that we go into with those hormones. Platelets go through the roof. So they get sticky. They cause that hardening or thickening up inside the heart arteries. Harder for blood, beautiful blood flow into the heart. The other one, it converts a lot of negative kind of, I like using the term kind of toxicity to the body long-term over repetitive use. So everything takes its time to work its way through your kidneys and through your liver and to kind of clean things out. Does that impair other functions of the body? Absolutely. And again, you're a whole being. You shut down your digestion too long. You shut down your mental capabilities. You shut down your sexual functioning capabilities. You shut down your kind of logical thought, and you're in this constant state of a bear chasing me out of the woods. It's all going to start to break at some point. But specifically to the heart, we worry about that inflammatory response. What is it doing into that tiny little beautiful structure of the arteries of the heart? So summing this up somewhat about this response that we have, can you always control it? No. This in no way today is to tell you that we are here to give you some type of psychological disorder diagnoses. This is more to guide you as to what is happening to my body with stress. What does it do to my heart? We want you to seek treatment. That is one of the key things, is you're never alone, that there's people there that are trained to help you through handling and coping with stress. Oftentimes, there's this perception that asking for help is a weakness. Asking for help is actually a strength. It shows that you're cognitive of what is happening around you. It shows that you have a desire to make your health better. At Health Aware, we have multiple resources for you that you can use to guide your health in every single body part that you have. Whether it's seeing someone for eating better or being referred to a physician that can treat you for psychological issues you're having, or even something as simple as learning how to journal correctly, or maybe you need acupuncture, or all kinds of integrative things we can talk about. We're going to talk about that a little bit more next week. But coming back to how do we handle situations and what can they lead to for the body, I do want to draw attention to the two most common ones reported to cardiologists is depression and anxiety. It's important to recognize that we're not talking about a diagnosis of clinical depression, and we're not talking about a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder. We're talking specifically about the reaction to stress that the body will have for every single one of us. It's a symptom of what we go through. Looking for those things and their effect on the body is important. So if in any way you're feeling maybe sluggish, slowed down, worn out, you are not alone. The long-term effect of staying there without seeking treatment can be detrimental to your physical body and health. Anxiety. Is it a natural reaction to what you've been through? Absolutely. Most of us are going to recognize that we've been through a trauma that causes us extra stress, right? So stress on the body because you're recognizing it immediately. The Thomas Fire here in Ventura is a good example of that. All it takes is just a whiff of a smell of like smoke, wood smoke, and wind, and you'll notice your body react. There's never judgment or kind of this place that we come to medically where we want you to feel ever inhibited to not address those issues, right? It's just your body's reaction. What we are concerned about is that it becomes a chronic long-term situation. When it becomes a chronic situation, meaning you're feeling this way and it's repetitive and it's over and over and over, we need you to recognize it, that it's happening, and then we want to reduce it so we don't have these long-term effects on our heart. What are some of the modalities we can use? There's multiple different forms of lifestyle and routine changes. Treatment. Again, I want to tell you that you can reach out to us with Health Aware. You can reach out to your own primary care physician, and they can send you into certain modalities for treatment. The most common one that we tell people to look for is start a modality that helps you with your perception. It could be something as simple as journaling. You take a book, you set it down, a notebook, and you start writing what you feel. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be one word. I hate journaling, but it has helped me tremendously in my own dealing with stress. I can write 2 or 3 words a day if I need to, and even come back to it and add to it later. But journal and acknowledge and name what you feel. You got to name it to tame it. You got to feel it to heal it. You got to recognize what's going on. Try to eliminate what you can. Start recognizing, oh my gosh, every time I do this, this makes me feel bad. I'm not going to do it anymore. Right, so these are just simple tools. The other one, take a deep breath. Breath work. Breath work's becoming more and more a part of our daily living as we bring attention in this pandemic to our respiratory health. Stop and learn how to take a nice deep breath. This truly creates metabolic and physical changes. This will prevent you from even having some heart problems. Meditation, clinically proven over and over again. You can always join Kate on Tuesday nights with us at Health Aware. She is amazing at leading you through a meditation and teaching you those tools, whether you use it 2 to 5 minutes every day or you're able to get into that space of even doing it up to 30 minutes a day. Sleep and exercise. This is so important. I want to go back to it at the very beginning of this situation. How do I physically change my body? It goes with basics of what you're made to do. How are you built? You need to be on a regular sleep routine and sleep hygiene. That's one of my favorites that the cardiologists use. Sleep hygiene program. You're doing the same thing every day to let your body relax itself into a place of sleep. Increase your exercise. You are made to move. It doesn't have to be anything off the chart and crazy. And something you think you're not capable of doing. It just means a simple walk, 10 minutes every day. If you can just tell yourself, I'm going to get out here, I'm going to walk 10 minutes a day, you are going to notice tremendous benefits to your mental and spiritual body. Get in nature. Going back to us being mammals, we are all wired to be connected to this earth. Take your shoes off. Walk outside barefoot on the grass. Walk in the sand. If you're here in Ventura, the greatest healer out there to you is the ocean that sits right outside our doors. Get in the sand. Let the water hit your feet. Allow yourself to look out across the horizon and gain hope in being a part of this earth. The other one, diet, of course. I am never going to be the one to lead you in that. I'm constantly seeking help in regards to good nutrition. Please seek out Melissa Davidson, our registered dietitian, to help you there. What are the other ones we talk about? Cognitive behavioral therapy. It is actually more effective than pharmaceuticals, but I do not ever want to disclaim pharmaceuticals and how they also help the brain chemically and the body chemically. So the combination of the two are highly effective in dealing with stress. Educate, learn steps to deal with your emotions. Some of the ones we'll talk about, especially next week, are complementary to what is clinically proven. Those are the ones I just mentioned for dealing with stress. The other ones that complement that there's unfortunately a lack of research on, but we're getting there slowly with Western medicine, is alternatives to help in dealing with your emotional reactions. They involve therapy, healing touch therapy, art therapy, music therapy, simple hobbies that you may have that bring you a release of stress and kind of removing your brain from what may be causing you stress. massage, healing touch, obviously those two together, we are seeing a lot of clinical data come back on those. Kind of what we go back to with exercise, sleep, and food. As mammals, we have a certain instinct to touch. Acupuncture, Reiki, acupressure, all of these things that can help you deal with stress. Our goal with you today was just to kind of understand stress and your reaction to it. We want you to have that capability of protecting yourself and keeping yourself out of danger and your body reacting appropriately. Our goal is that you not stay there chronically. I know it's hard this past year. We've had things truly that we call stress where they're out of your control. They're not automatically changeable. How do we just learn to cope through that? I'm going to talk about that a little bit more next week, especially in regards to keeping your heart safe. But I do hope that today's class helped. It's always good to just educate yourself on what is my body doing or what's happening to my body because it's exposed to certain things, not just bad food or not getting exercise or chemical, environmental things that a lot of people are exposed to that affect their health, but also stress, just the day-to-day toll of living as this whole being. See you hopefully this Saturday. We have 2 more Saturdays left on our Yoga for the Heart series. Would love to have you join us. And also next Monday, we will have our final Heart Health Focused here with Health Aware Monday session. It will be about integrative medicine with the Western medicine and availability of that here in Ventura, and move forward with hope. The light in me always honors the light in you. Take care of yourselves. Bye.